Commander Dexlar stepped onto the human diplomatic station with his head held high. His crimson armor gleamed under the artificial lights, and his forearms rested on the ceremonial weapons at his sides. Behind him, 20 Krell warriors marched in formation, their boots striking the metal floor in perfect rhythm. This was how first contact should be done. This was how the Krell had greeted 47 other species before humanity, and 47 times. Those species had learned their place in the galaxy. The human ambassador waiting for them looked soft. She wore no armor, carried no weapons, and stood barely as tall as a Krell's chest. Her name was Ambassador Sarah Chun, and she smiled as Dexlar approached. "Welcome to Station Unity," she said, extending her hand. "We're honored to meet the Krell people." Dexlar stared at the hand. In Krell culture, such a gesture was an insult, suggesting the other party was too weak to be a threat. He did not take her hand. Instead, he issued his challenge, as tradition demanded. "I am Commander Dexlar of the Krell Dominion. We claim the space you call the Outer Territories. You may acknowledge our superiority now, or we shall demonstrate it in honorable combat." Ambassador Chun's smile never wavered. "We'd prefer to discuss trade agreements and cultural exchange. There's room in this galaxy for everyone." Dexlar felt his warriors' pride swell. The humans were cowards. They would submit without a fight, like so many others before them. He returned to his ship and sent his report to the Dominion. The human territories would fall within a month. 3 weeks later, the Krell attacked. They chose 3 human agricultural colonies on the border, small worlds with minimal defenses. The invasions went exactly as planned. Human defense forces fought bravely, but were overwhelmed by superior Krell numbers and centuries of warrior tradition. Within 5 days, all 3 worlds belonged to the Dominion. 20,000 human civilians were taken as slaves. As was customary for conquered peoples, Fleet Commander Zaxter stood on the bridge of his flagship and composed a message to Earth. "Your colonies have fallen. Your people serve the Krell now. You have 1 cycle to surrender your home world, or we shall take it by force. Respond with honor, and your deaths will be swift." He sent the message and waited. The humans had 1 standard week to reply. Zaxter expected them to either surrender or gather their fleets for a glorious battle. Either outcome would be acceptable, but the humans never responded. The week passed in silence. Zaxter prepared to advance on Earth when the first strange report arrived. A supply ship had disappeared. Not destroyed, just gone. No distress signal, no debris, nothing. The ship had been traveling between 2 Krell-controlled systems. While away from human space, Zaxter dismissed it as a mechanical failure. Such things happened, even in the mighty Krell fleet. Then another ship vanished. And another. Within 2 weeks, 7 vessels had disappeared without explanation. The 8th ship was found. A Krell patrol discovered it drifting near an asteroid field, all systems dark. The boarding party entered cautiously, weapons ready. They found the ship empty. The entire crew was gone. Life support was still functioning. The last meal sat half-eaten in the dining hall. But 300 Krell warriors had simply vanished in the ship's main corridor. Someone had written a message on the wall in red paint. 2 words in perfect Krell script: "We visited." Zaxter ordered increased patrols. He sent pairs of ships instead of solo vessels. It didn't matter. Ships kept disappearing. Sometimes the crews vanished. Sometimes the ships were found with the crew dead, their throats cut in their sleep. Always there were messages. "We were here. We're watching. Sleep well." The Krell warriors began to feel something unfamiliar. Unease. They checked their ships obsessively, searching for intruders. They found nothing. Whoever was doing this moved like ghosts. Then the broadcast started. Every Krell communication channel simultaneously activated. On every screen, on every ship, the same video played. It showed a Krell warrior sitting in a plain room. He wore no armor. His head was lowered. A human voice spoke from off-camera. "Tell him your name." I was Warrior Kexmal of the 3rd Fleet." "And what happened to you, Kexmal?" The warrior's voice broke. "You came into my ship. You took me while I slept. You showed me—" He stopped, his body shaking. "You showed me what you'll do to my home world, to my family. You showed me how easy it would be for you to kill everyone I love. Did we hurt you, Kexmal?" "No." The warrior looked up and his eyes were red from crying. "You didn't have to. You just made me understand. You made me see. We can't win. We can never win. You're not like the others. You're not warriors. You're something else. Something worse." The video ended. For a moment, every Krell communication channel was silent. Then another video played. And another. 12 captured Krell warriors, all telling similar stories. None showed signs of physical torture. All were broken in spirit, crying, begging their fellow Krell to surrender before humanity showed them the same visions. Zaxter stood on his bridge, watching his crew's faces as they witnessed their fellow warriors reduced to weeping children. He saw fear in their eyes. Real fear. The kind of fear the Krell warriors were trained from birth to never feel. A message appeared on his personal terminal. It was addressed to him specifically. "Fleet Commander Zaxter, we know you're a father. You have 3 children on the Krell home world. We know their names. We know their school. We know their daily routine. We wanted you to know that we know. Sleep well, Commander." Zaxter's hands trembled as he erased the message. He looked at his crew, and for the first time in his military career, he didn't know what to do. The humans hadn't attacked his fleet. They hadn't engaged in battle. They had simply demonstrated that they could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. The Krell Dominion had conquered 47 species. They had always won through superior strength and warrior skill. But humanity was teaching them a lesson they had never encountered before. Sometimes, the most brutal tactic isn't violence. Sometimes, it's simply making your enemy realize that violence is pointless, that they've already lost, and that continuing to fight will only make their nightmares come true. Zaxter sat in his command chair and wondered if he would sleep tonight. He suspected he wouldn't. None of them would. And somehow, he knew that was exactly what the humans wanted. The Galactic Council chamber filled with representatives from 30 different species. Emergency sessions were rare, but the situation with humanity and the Krell had every civilization worried. The council members took their seats in the circular hall, their translators humming softly as different languages filled the air. Ambassador Sarah Chun walked to the center platform. She wore the same simple suit she'd worn when meeting Commander Dexler months ago. Her expression was calm, almost pleasant, as thousands of alien eyes focused on her. The council speaker, a tall Vexian named Kurth, spoke first. "Ambassador Chun, this council demands an explanation. The Krell Dominion has filed a formal complaint. They claim humanity is engaging in psychological warfare, using terror tactics, and violating the Galactic Convention on Honorable Combat." Chun nodded slowly. "The Krell attacked 3 of our colonies without provocation. They enslaved 20,000 human civilians, including children. We responded appropriately." "Appropriately?" A Krell representative stood, his 4 arms gesturing wildly. "You infiltrate our ships like thieves. You steal our warriors in the night. You broadcast propaganda designed to break their spirits. These are not the actions of honorable opponents." "You're right," Chun said simply. "They're not. Because we're not playing your game. The Krell Dominion has a very specific idea of what war should look like. Fleets meeting in space. Warriors fighting warriors. Honor and glory and all that. It's very neat and tidy for you. She paused. But you attacked our families. You took our children as slaves. So we're going to make you stop, and we're going to do it in the most effective way possible. By terrorizing our people? The Krell representative shouted. By making sure you never attack civilians again, Chun replied. Her voice remained level, but something hard entered her eyes. The Galactic Convention on Honorable Combat is a lovely document. Humanity reviewed it when we joined the Council. Do you know what we noticed? It was written by species who had never fought a total war. Species who could afford to have rules because they'd never faced extinction. Karth leaned forward. Are you saying humanity won't follow the convention? I'm saying the convention is a luxury for species who haven't had to fight for survival. Earth's history is filled with total wars. Wars where entire civilizations were erased. We learned hard lessons about what happens when you hold back, when you fight fair, when you give your enemy time to regroup. Chun looked around the chamber. The Krell want a fair fight. We want them to surrender as quickly as possible with as few deaths as possible. If that means making them too afraid to fight, then that's what we'll do. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species nodded in agreement. Others shouted their disapproval. Chun waited patiently for the noise to die down. A Sivian ambassador, her scales shimmering blue with concern, asked the question many were thinking. Ambassador Chun, if humanity can do this to the Krell, what's to stop you from doing it to us? Chun met her eyes directly. Nothing, technically. We could. But we won't, because you've never given us a reason to. The Krell enslaved our children. That's the line. Cross it, and you'll discover what humanity is capable of. Stay on the right side of that line, and we're the best allies you could ask for. The blunt honesty sent a chill through the chamber. Chun wasn't making threats. She was simply stating facts, which somehow made it worse. While the council debated, human operations against the Krell intensified. Special forces teams continued their work. They didn't just infiltrate ships anymore. They infiltrated everything. Krell military bases found human operatives had been living in their ventilation systems for weeks. Command centers discovered their secure communications had been compromised months ago. Everywhere the Krell looked, they found evidence that humans had been there first. The psychological toll was devastating. Krell warriors stopped sleeping properly. They jumped at shadows. They checked their rooms obsessively before resting. Some refused to sleep at all, standing watch over their own quarters. Medical facilities reported an epidemic of what human doctors called paranoia, but the Krell had no word for the condition in their language. Human intelligence released another round of videos. These were different. Instead of showing captured Krell warriors, they showed something more chilling. The videos were security footage from Krell ships, time-stamped and verified as authentic. They showed human operatives moving through Krell vessels at night, invisible to sensors, walking past sleeping warriors, examining weapons, accessing computers, and then leaving without a trace. One video showed a human soldier standing over a sleeping Krell commander. The soldier could have killed him easily. Instead, the human simply placed a small device on the bedside table and left. When the commander woke, he found a human tablet. On the screen was a message. We could have killed you. We chose not to. Think about that. The Krell military began to fracture. Some commanders wanted to press the attack on Earth, believing that only total victory would end the nightmare. Others refused to advance, knowing that humans were already aboard their ships, already in their systems, already 10 steps ahead. Fleet Commander Zaxter found himself in the second group. He hadn't slept properly in 3 weeks. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined human soldiers standing over him. His crew was falling apart. 2 warriors had committed suicide rather than face potential capture. Others were requesting transfers to non-combat positions. A human message arrived on his personal terminal. This one was different. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. Commander Zaxter, we know you're a reasonable warrior. We know you care about your crew. Meet with us. Talk. There's a way out of this that doesn't involve everyone dying or going mad. The coordinates are attached. Come alone. We promise you'll return safely. Zaxter stared at the message for hours. It could be a trap. It probably was a trap. But he was desperate. His fleet was crumbling from within. His warriors were terrified of an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't even find. He took a small shuttle to the coordinates. An asteroid field in neutral space. A single human ship waited there, barely larger than his shuttle. He docked and entered. 3 humans waited for him. 2 were soldiers, but they stood relaxed, weapons holstered. The third was a woman in civilian clothes, maybe 50 years old, with gray in her hair and kind eyes that didn't match the situation. I'm Dr. Sarah Martinez, she said. I'm a psychologist. I helped design the program you're experiencing. Zaxter's 4 hands clenched into fists. You broke my warriors. Yes, Martinez said simply. That was the goal. Your warriors attacked our children. We could have killed thousands of Krell in retaliation. Instead, we broke the will of a few hundred and let them spread the fear. Fewer deaths. Same result. You're going to stop fighting. Krell do not surrender, Zaxter growled. Then Krell go insane, Martinez replied calmly. Commander, your entire fleet is experiencing severe psychological trauma. Your warriors can't sleep. They can't trust their own ships. They see threats everywhere because threats are everywhere. We've been inside every vessel in your fleet. We've accessed every system. We've watched your people for months. And we've barely hurt anyone. Why? Zaxter asked. Why not just kill us? Martinez smiled sadly. Because dead warriors become martyrs. Broken warriors become warnings. When this is over, your people will remember what happened when they attacked human civilians. They'll remember the fear. They'll remember the helplessness. And they'll never ever attack human children again. She paused. That's the goal, Commander. Not to destroy the Krell, just to make sure you never threaten our families. Zaxter felt something he'd never experienced before. Not just fear, but understanding. The humans hadn't been randomly cruel. Every action had been calculated to achieve a specific psychological effect. They turned his entire fleet into a teaching tool, a living example of what happened when you crossed humanity's one unbreakable line. What do you want from me? They asked quietly. Surrender, Martinez said. Not just you. Your entire fleet. Convince your superiors to stand down. We'll return your enslaved humans. You'll return home. And then we'll all forget this happened, except for the lesson learned. And if I refuse? Martinez's kind eyes grew cold. Then we continue. Your warriors will keep breaking. Some will die by their own hands. Others will simply lose their minds. We can keep this up for years if necessary. We're patient. We're thorough. And we never, ever forget when someone hurts our children. Zaxter left the meeting and returned to his fleet. He sat in his command chair and looked at his crew. They were all watching him, hoping he had answers. He thought about his 3 children back home. He thought about the human operative who knew their names, knew their school, knew everything about them. He opened a communication channel to Krell High Command. This is Fleet Commander Zaxter. I need to report a situation. The humans... He paused, choosing his words carefully. The humans have won. We just haven't admitted it yet. Krell High Command refused to believe Fleet Commander Zaxter's report. War Master Drekthal, the supreme military leader of the Krell Dominion, declared Zaxter a coward and stripped him of rank. The War Master sent new orders to the fleet. Advance on Earth immediately. Show these humans what real warriors could do. Die with honor or achieve victory. Nothing else mattered, but the fleet commanders who received those orders hesitated. They'd seen the videos. They'd watched their warriors break down. They'd experienced the paranoia firsthand. Some commanders simply refused the orders. Others prepared to advance, but found their crews unwilling to follow. Krell warriors, trained from birth to obey without question, were quietly sabotaging their own ships rather than face human psychological operations. The Krell Empire began to fracture in ways that had never happened in its 4,000-year history. Warrior clans argued with each other. Some wanted to continue the war. Others wanted to retreat and regroup. A few quietly suggested surrendering, though they were quickly silenced by traditionalists, who viewed surrender as worse than death. The humans watched all of this with perfect clarity. They'd infiltrated Krell communication networks so thoroughly that they knew about internal debates before some Krell commanders did. Human intelligence officers sat in comfortable offices on Earth, reading reports from operatives embedded deep within Krell society. And they adjusted their strategy accordingly. Dr. Martinez presented her analysis to the human military command. The Krell are breaking faster than projected. Their entire culture is built on the idea of honorable combat. They literally have no framework for dealing with fear or paranoia. It's like their psychological immune system never developed because they've never needed it. Admiral James Torres studied the reports. He was a veteran of Earth's last major conflict, a man who understood both traditional warfare and the newer methods humanity had developed. How many Krell have actually died in our operations? 217, Martinez replied. Mostly from accidents during extraction operations. We've tried to minimize casualties, and on our side, 43 operatives lost, mostly in the initial infiltration phases. Torres nodded slowly. So we've effectively defeated a Krell fleet of 3,000 warships, with less than 300 total deaths on both sides combined. In a traditional engagement, we'd be looking at hundreds of thousands of casualties. That was the goal, Martinez said. Break their will, not their bodies. Dead Krell become martyrs and heroes. Living Krell who are scared spread that fear to others. The Galactic Council is calling it barbaric. Martinez shrugged. The Galactic Council has never fought a species that enslaved their children. Easy to have opinions about morality when you've never faced that choice. While the debates raged in Krell High Command and the Galactic Council, humanity prepared for the next phase. They knew the Krell leadership would eventually make a decision. The question was whether it would be surrender or a final desperate attack. The answer came 3 weeks later. War Master Drekthil assembled every available Krell warship. Nearly 3,000 vessels, the largest armada in Krell history. He gave a speech that was broadcast across the entire fleet. We are Krell. We are warriors. We do not cower from shadows and whispers. We will sail to Earth, and we will either conquer it or die gloriously in the attempt. Either fate is preferable to this. This fear. The Armada began its journey to Sol System. Human intelligence tracked every ship, every movement, every communication. They knew the Krell were coming, knew exactly when they'd arrive, knew the fleet composition down to the last fighter craft. Earth's military prepared, but not in the way the Krell expected. No massive fleet assembled to meet them in battle. Instead, a single diplomatic courier ship was dispatched to wait at the edge of Sol System. The Krell Armada arrived in perfect formation. 3,000 warships, carrying hundreds of thousands of warriors, all ready to fight and die for their honor. They emerged from faster-than-light travel and immediately scanned for the human fleet. They found only the small courier ship, broadcasting a simple message on repeat. You have 24 hours to surrender. This is your only warning. War Master Drechthel, commanding from his flagship at the center of the formation, laughed. The humans had sent a single unarmed ship to face the might of the Krell Dominion. It was either supreme arrogance or supreme stupidity. He ordered the fleet to advance. Then, across every ship in the Armada, something happened. Every personal terminal activated simultaneously. Every screen, every display, every communication device lit up with the same content. Each Krell warrior saw themselves on their own screen. The video showed them in their quarters, sleeping, eating, preparing for battle. Private moments, captured over the past weeks and months. Each video had a timestamp. Some were from days ago, some were from hours ago, some were from mere minutes before the fleet had jumped to Sol System. And in each video, at some point, a figure appeared. A human operative, moving silently through the ship, approaching the sleeping or distracted Krell warrior. The human would stand there for a moment, sometimes placing a hand on the warrior's shoulder, sometimes simply observing, and then they would leave. The timestamps proved this had all really happened. The humans had been there, inside their ships, inside their private quarters, close enough to kill them at any moment, but they hadn't killed anyone. They just watched and recorded and left. War Master Drechthel stared at his own screen. He watched himself sleeping in his personal quarters 3 hours ago. A human soldier stood beside his bed, looking down at him. The human could have slit his throat, could have planted a bomb, could have done anything. Instead, the human had simply left a small data chip on the bedside table and walked away. Drechthel reached for the data chip with a trembling hand. He inserted it into his terminal. A message appeared. Text only, simple and direct. War Master Drechthel, we have been inside every ship in your fleet. We have accessed every system. We control your life support, your weapons, your engines. We could have killed every warrior in this armada at any time over the past 3 months. We chose not to. We wanted you to understand something. This fight is over. It was over before you arrived. You cannot win because you've already lost. You just didn't know it yet. Surrender now. Go home. Tell your people what you learned here. Tell them what happens when they attack human children. This is not a threat. This is a fact. You have 23 hours and 47 minutes remaining. Across the fleet, Krell warriors were having similar realizations. They'd been infiltrated completely. The humans could have destroyed them all in their sleep. The entire journey to Earth had been pointless because the humans had already won. Some warriors broke down crying. Others sat in stunned silence. A few tried to rally their courage, shouting about honor and glory, but their voices sounded hollow even to themselves. Fleet Commander Raxter, third in command of the Armada, opened a communication channel to Drechthel. War Master, we need to discuss our options. Options? Drechtel's voice was bitter. What options do we have? They own us. They've owned us for months. We're only alive because they allow it. Then what do we do? Drechthel looked at the human courier ship, still broadcasting its message. 24 hours to surrender. The humans had given them a choice, which was more mercy than the Krell had shown human civilians. He thought about the 3 colonies his people had attacked, the families enslaved, the children taken from their parents. He thought about his own children back on the Krell home world. He wondered if human operatives were there too, watching them, knowing everything about them. He suspected they were. The humans had proven they could go anywhere, see anything, know everything. We surrender, Drechthel said quietly. Signal the human ship. Tell them the Krell Dominion accepts their terms. The message went out. The largest armada in Krell history assembled for one final glorious battle surrendered without firing a single shot. It was the first time in recorded galactic history that an entire Krell war fleet had capitulated without combat. The human courier ship acknowledged the surrender and transmitted new coordinates. Proceed to the following location. You will be met by representatives who will discuss the terms of peace and the return of captured civilians. Your cooperation is appreciated. As the Armada changed course, following human instructions like defeated warriors following their conquerors, Drekthal sat in his command chair and felt something he'd never experienced before. Not just defeat, but complete and utter helplessness. The humans had beaten them without a battle. They'd won the war by making the Krell realize that fighting was pointless. It was. Drekthal realized the most brutal tactic imaginable. Not killing your enemies, but making them understand they were already dead if you chose it. Not destroying their ships, but destroying their confidence and courage and will to fight. The Krell had always prided themselves on being the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Humanity had taught them a lesson that would echo through Krell culture for generations. The greatest warriors aren't always the ones who win battles. Sometimes, they're the ones who make battles unnecessary by ensuring their enemies surrender before the fighting even begins. The surrender negotiations took place on a neutral station. War Master Drekthal arrived expecting to meet military commanders, perhaps even the generals who had orchestrated the psychological campaign. Instead, he found himself in a conference room with civilian diplomats, psychologists, historians, and cultural specialist. Ambassador Sarah Chun greeted him with the same calm smile she'd worn during first contact. War Master, please, sit. We have much to discuss. Drekthal sat, his forearms folded across his chest. The other Krell representatives arranged themselves around the table, all looking uncomfortable without their weapons. You wish to discuss terms of our surrender, Drekthal said flatly. Actually, we wish to discuss reconstruction, Chun replied. Your fleet will return home. The 20,000 human civilians you enslaved will return to their colonies, healthy and unharmed. But more importantly, we need to talk about what happens next. A human woman with gray hair, Dr. Martinez, pulled up a holographic display. It showed psychological profiles, cultural analysis, and projections of Krell society over the next decade. War Master, what we did to your people was traumatic. Necessary, from our perspective, but traumatic nonetheless. Your warriors are experiencing something your culture has no framework for. Anxiety, paranoia, fear of the unknown. These are conditions that will persist unless addressed. You broke us, Drekthal said bitterly. Now you wish to fix us? We wish to help you adapt, Martinez corrected. The Krell Dominion has operated under a specific set of assumptions for thousands of years. Might makes right. Combat determines hierarchy. Honor through battle. These beliefs work well in a universe where everyone shares them. But you've now encountered a species that doesn't play by those rules. Your culture needs to evolve, or this trauma will define your civilization for generations. A younger human, introduced as Dr. James Park, a cultural anthropologist, leaned forward. We've studied your history. The Krell weren't always pure warriors. 3,000 years ago, your people valued art, philosophy, scientific inquiry. The warrior culture emerged later, after a devastating civil war. It served a purpose, bringing unity through shared military values. But that culture also made you vulnerable to exactly the kind of psychological warfare we employed. Drekthal wanted to be angry, but he found himself curious instead. You're saying we did this to ourselves? We're saying your culture's strengths became exploitable weaknesses, Park explained. Warriors trained to never feel fear become helpless when fear is forced upon them. A society with no concept of surrender has no defense against psychological defeat. We didn't break you, War Master. We simply found the fault lines in your cultural armor. Chun took over. Here's what we're proposing. Human psychologists and cultural specialists will work with Krell society, not to change who you are, but to help process the trauma and integrate new concepts. Conditional warfare. Proportional response. The idea that surrender can be strategic rather than shameful. Your younger generation will learn these concepts alongside traditional Krell values. You want to reshape our entire civilization, Drechthel said. We want to help your civilization avoid collapse. Chun replied. Right now, your warriors are returning home carrying psychological scars. They'll tell stories of human ghosts that move through ships unseen. Children will grow up hearing about the war where the mighty Krell surrendered without firing a shot. Without guidance, that narrative will poison your culture. With help, it can become a story of adaptation and wisdom. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The Krell representatives resisted at first, but slowly came to understand what the humans were offering. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not humiliation, but evolution. The humans had the power to destroy Krell civilization entirely, but instead they were offering a path forward. 5 years after the war's end, the transformation was remarkable. The Krell Dominion had restructured into the Krell Commonwealth, a federation of worlds with democratic representation. They maintained their military, but it was now focused on defense rather than conquest. Young Krell served alongside humans in joint peacekeeping forces. Learning both species' approaches to security and conflict resolution. Dr. Martinez visited a Krell military academy where she'd been invited to speak. Young warriors, barely adults, listened intently as she explained the psychology behind what had happened during the war. Your people valued honor and strength, she told them. We valued effectiveness and survival. Neither approach is wrong, but understanding both makes you better soldiers. A young warrior raised one of his 4 hands. Did you feel guilty? For what you did to our warriors? Martinez considered the question carefully. Yes and no. I felt terrible seeing Krell warriors in psychological distress. But I also remembered the human children your forces enslaved. I remembered that our methods, brutal as they seemed, resulted in far fewer deaths than traditional warfare would have. Sometimes the most merciful option doesn't feel merciful at the time. Former War Master Drechthel, now Ambassador Drechthel, became an unexpected advocate for the new approach. He traveled throughout Krell space, speaking at military installations and civilian gatherings. His message was consistent. We learned that war is not about who can fight hardest, but who can think deepest. Humanity didn't defeat us with weapons. They defeated us with understanding. They knew our culture better than we knew ourselves. And they used that knowledge to make continued fighting pointless. At a memorial service for the Krell warriors who had died during the conflict, Drechthel stood beside Ambassador Chun. Human and Krell families gathered to honor their dead. Fewer than 300 total casualties from what could have been a war killing hundreds of thousands. We attacked your children, Drechthel said quietly to Chun. You had every right to destroy us completely. Instead, you broke our spirit and rebuilt it stronger. I'm still not sure whether to thank you or hate you for that. Chun smiled sadly. You can do both. We understood that the Krell people weren't our enemy. The Krell warrior culture, the belief that might makes right, that was the enemy. We fought that belief system, not your people. The fact that you're standing here, helping lead your civilization to something new, proves it worked. The Galactic Council formally recognized humanity's approach as the doctrine of minimal casualties through psychological operations. It remained controversial. Some species praised it as the most humane warfare method ever developed. Others condemned it as a violation of natural rights to honorable combat. But none could deny its effectiveness. Ambassador Chun gave a speech at the council 5 years after the war. You call our methods brutal. You say we terrorize the Krell. I won't dispute that. But let me ask you this. Which is more brutal? Killing 100,000 warriors in glorious battle, leaving their families without fathers, mothers, children? Or breaking the spirit of a few thousand warriors and sending everyone home alive? We chose to preserve life by attacking will rather than bodies. Judge us if you wish, but the Krell attacked our families, and those families came home. Every single civilian we lost in the initial attacks was recovered alive. That was our priority. Everything else was just tactics. In a secure facility on Earth, human intelligence officers continued their work. They monitored potential threats, embedded operatives in alien societies, and maintained the network that had proven so effective against the Krell. But the work had changed. Now they focused more on early warning and conflict prevention than on psychological warfare preparation. General Torres, now head of Human Intelligence Operations, briefed his staff. The galaxy knows what we're capable of when pushed. That's both an advantage and a danger. Some species will never trust us fully. Others will try to learn our methods. Our job is to ensure we never need to use these tactics again, while remaining ready if we do. A young intelligence officer asked, "Sir, if another species attacks us the way the Krell did, would we do it again?" Torres didn't hesitate. Yes, without question. What we did to the Krell was brutal. It was psychological warfare at its most effective and terrifying. But it saved lives on both sides. Traditional warfare would have killed hundreds of thousands. Our approach killed less than 300. If protecting human civilians means breaking enemy morale through fear and psychological operations, then that's what we'll do. Every single time. The officer nodded, understanding the weight of that responsibility. In Krell space, a grandmother told her grandchild the story of the war. We learned that the universe is bigger than our warrior traditions. We learned that honor isn't just about how you fight, but about knowing when fighting is necessary and when it isn't. Humanity taught us that lesson by showing us we'd already lost before we knew we were fighting. It was terrifying. It was humiliating. And it saved our civilization from destroying itself through endless conquest. The child asked, "Are the humans our friends now?" The grandmother thought about it. They're our teachers. They're our partners. Whether they're our friends, that's still being decided. But we respect them. We respect them more than any species we ever conquered, because they conquered us without killing us. That took a kind of strength we didn't know existed. Ambassador Chun sat in her office, looking at reports from across the galaxy. Peace was fragile.